Okay, almost the end of July 2025. As promised in my last podcast on PNE affairs, I'm going to do a quick, possibly 20-minute review today of transfer activities since I last spoke to you all. Now, a lot of fans have criticised me that say you're always moaning about the club. And just to set the record straight, earlier on in the summer, I was quite excited actually with the signings of Small, Afire, and Everson. So much so that I was at the point of actually buying a season ticket because I thought this looks good. If we build on this, we could have a good season. Unfortunately, since those three excellent signings, it's all gone downhill big time. And I'll just run through the players that I'm talking about. In that case, let's analyse the signings subsequent to those three I was mentioning. First one was Thompson, 28-year-old. I call him a journeyman from Stoke City. That's been confirmed to me by Stoke City fans that I've spoken to. And this one is a huge mistake by the club once again. I don't know what the hell happened here, but it turned out that we've signed a player who has a long-term injury. That means he's on a 2-year contract, more like a 3-year contract, and it's going to be several months before we see him in action. That one beggars belief. The obvious question to ask there is, where was the due diligence to check him out? Apparently it was some scan that was misinterpreted or didn't show up the full extent of the injury. But as far as I'm concerned, if you've got a full medical team, that should have been identified. So that is one huge mistake that puts us a player down before we kicked off. Second one was the signing, again, of a free transfer, again, 28 years old, Paul Valentin from Sheffield Wednesday. And again, I use the word journeyman. Nothing special. In the glimpses I've seen of him in the pre-season friendlies, nothing that stands out. And as I say, yet another 28-year-old journeyman signing. Then the one for me that completely beggars belief is the signing of Vucevic, left back, left wing back, or whatever he is. Again, yes, you guessed it, a 28-year-old, a great buddy of Osmaic, and to me, it looks like he's going to become Osmaic's taxi driver. All very convenient, isn't it? But what I can't believe is that immediately, with a player who's only ever been a journeyman type footballer internationally, if you look at his record, he's been here today, gone tomorrow with the clubs he's been playing for. And I cannot for the life of me understand why, in a scenario like that, with that track record, in negotiations, Ridsdale offered Vucevic a 3-year contract. That's not the art of negotiation. You negotiate from a position of strength. Now, apparently, Vucevic was desperate to come and play in England. I use the word desperate, which is the giveaway when you're negotiating. That means, logically, if Ridsdale had any savvy about him, if we had to sign Vucevic, personally, I wouldn't have allowed that one to go through. But if we had to sign him, he should have been offered a 1-year deal to start off with, and then be told, prove yourself through your performances, and then we will offer you a 2nd-year contract because you will have earned it. We're not giving out a 3-year deal automatically. And if that was not acceptable to Vucevic, it would have been, well, thank you very much for coming over, thanks for your time, but we will not be signing you. That for me is another huge mistake. And what has got me angry is the fact that that signing has denied our very own young, 20 years old now, Pasiek, big, strong, left back, good at getting down the wing, getting those crosses in. He now hasn't been given a single opportunity to prove himself. And that, for me, that goes from Ridsdale, that goes to Heckingbottom. That's an absolute disgrace that it didn't give him one opportunity, a proper opportunity, in these pre-season friendly games. Because if Paziev had come in and proved himself, we wouldn't have needed to sign Vucevic and pay him, 200, 300 grand a year. Then it looks like our marquee signing so far up front is 33-year-old Michael Smith on a free transfer from Sheffield Wednesday. 33 years old. So he's the target man, but he's too old. He's on a 2-year deal. That takes him up to 35, but he's soon to be 34 anyway, so we're talking about him being 36 when he leaves. And as with all 4 of these players, you know what I'm going to say, they all have zero resale value. And the club keeps complaining, Peter Ridsdale keeps complaining, I don't have enough money to go out there and make quality signings. That's one of the key reasons that is the case. Then going on to signings that could have happened or did happen, the goalkeeping situation, obviously that had to be rectified after we nearly went down last season, avoided relegation by just 1 point. They signed 27-year-old Walton. He's a good goalkeeper, actually. But they've paid a fee to Luton Town for him. So I would estimate that fee is in the region of something like £500,000. That £500,000, if we'd acted in a different way, and I'll just explain in a minute, could have been put towards signing a quality striker. What I'm advocating then is that instead of signing Walton, who's a good goalkeeper, but there's 2 lads we could have signed for free. The first one being Lucas Bergstrom, 22 years old, 6'5" Finland under-21 goalkeeper, who this summer was released by Chelsea on a free transfer. And that lad is one hell of a keeper. And apparently the youth people at Chelsea weren't happy about him being released. Why didn't we move in for him on a free transfer? The other one, I'm not sure whether Marshall of Villa, he's a good lad, 22 years old, good goalkeeper. I'm not sure if he was a free. I think he was. He was at Aston Villa. He's now signed for Stevenage. Come on. If we can't compete with Stevenage, then what's it all about? The point I'm making there is with those 2 keepers, 2 young lads, 22 years old, Marshall and Bergstrom, if they were both, well, certainly Bergstrom was free. We could have signed them for free. That would have saved us that £500,000, which goes towards signing a quality striker. Therefore, I don't understand why we actually did that. Again, it looks like another, unfortunately, huge mistake. Then we get Ridsdale arguing recently in one of the interviews on a podcast that, yes, he'd like to go for an Academy Stage 2 type operation, but that would cost us an extra £2 million a year to run. Well, I've just quickly written down how he could finance that, and it's quite easy. Look at the wages of Potts, £500,000 I estimate. Brady possibly still on 500k, Cornell 100k, Keane 350k, Hughes 300k. We could do with all of those players. We don't need them. They're bit part players. In total, getting rid of them returns us about £1.8 million. Then, instead of paying Ridsdale £430,000 a year, you get somebody like me, who's more than capable of being CEO of Preston North End, doing the job at the true value for that position, which is £200,000 a year. And there you have it. £2 million, which is financing the Youth Academy on an ongoing annual basis. So that would be, those savings would be for 2 or 3 years. In that 2 to 3 years of funding the academy, by then we should have hopefully a conveyor belt of at least 2 to 3 quality youngsters coming through every season who can be signed on as full pros and brought into the team, developed and sold, hopefully generating a profit that then is reinvested. There are ways and means of actually funding the academy, but it looks as though Ridsdale's not putting enough thought into this. And I repeat, those players we can do without them. And you say, well, it leaves a big gap in the squad we've got. We could have filled those positions with free transfer signings from youngsters released from Premiership clubs this summer. But we didn't do it. As for the new signings, as of today, almost the end of July, still unbelievably no news of a striker, an attacking midfielder, or a winger. And I'll put my pennyworth in it here. I would be arguing what we should be looking at for the striker is on a permanent Joe Geldart, 22 years old from Leeds United. I think we get him for about 2.5 million. Because Leeds want to get rid. On loan from Liverpool, Jadon Dan's 19, possibly 20 now. So that will be my main strike force. Attacking midfielders, we come back to Zidane Iqbal, 22 years old at Utrecht, 22 years old. And at Stockport, Lewis Bate, 22, both attacking young players who could be developed and sold for a whacking profit. And that's who I nominate for the attacking midfield roles. Wingers, you've all heard me say this before. Barr, who's about 23 now at Watford, they want to get rid. I think we could pick him up for about 500k actually. And then this comes down to, it's all gone quiet over there, Mr. Ridsdale, regarding what was supposed to be the imminent signing of Shay Reid, a 17-year-old striker from Cliftonville. I thought that was ready to go through last week. Then we had reports of Peter Ridsdale having phoned up his family and spoken to them. That's Reid's parents. And strangely enough, subsequent to that phone call, it's all gone very quiet after it was supposed to be an imminent signing, and the latest I've heard is he's on his way to Celtic instead. I hope that's wrong, but if that's correct, then what the hell did Ridsdale say to Reid's parents and Reid himself that put them off? And then the other signing, if we can't afford to go out there and sign the finished article, as with Barr, then there's a young lad at Sligo Rovers in Ireland, Owen Elding, just 19 years old, a mercurial winger. Fantastic pace, very tricky, and that would be the question put to our so-called scouting team, which is this lad, Owen Elding, he could do it at that level in Ireland. You tell us now whether he's worth signing. Can he do that in the Championship? And if we have a proper scouting system, they should be able to advise accordingly. As I say, this is a quick update today. Early start, small Afire Everson, great, got me excited, and then it's all come off the rails with Thompson, Valentin, Vucevic and Smith, not impressed at all. That is a return to journeyman type signings who will get you nowhere. Hugely disappointing. Anyway, we've got a few weeks to go yet before the transfer deadline closes down, but I'm hoping before we kick off against QPR, the striker, the attacking midfielder and the winger are all in place. We'll see. One last point. Somebody has been defending the Hemmings family on the social media, grovelling to them, saying basically we should all doff our caps to them for the money they put in every year. what we've been arguing, people like myself, is we appreciate the money that the Hemmings family put in, but we want to see it being used more effectively. And signing Thompson, Valentin, Vucevic and Smith, with Thompson being out injured for several months, unbelievable. That is not an effective allocation and use of the Hemmings family investment. But one last point, we don't doff our caps to the Hemmings family, because if it wasn't for the supporters signing a petition, then the Hemmings family would never have been granted planning permission for Ingle for housing development. And I've been told by somebody working in that trade, the value of putting up houses on the Ingle site would be something like £60 million. So that is only possible, I repeat, because Preston North End fans signed a petition that was submitted to the council, and under pressure the council relented and gave the planning permission for development. So think on that. We'll see what happens over the next week or so. Bye.